presenting your host for the Racecoin podcast, Jay.
What's going on, my Racecoin fans? I'm here with Dion Von Moltke. He's an American-born race car driver. It's amazing to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I was excited to be here, talk about motorsports and what we love to do, right?
Yeah, definitely. So how did you start it off in Races 360, coaching and this whole new online teaching course?
Yeah, so I'd spent 10 years as a professional in the sport, and opportunities were starting to come down a little bit. So in this sport, it's always year by year. And certain years you might not have a ride, or you have to figure out what else you can do. So a lot of the professional drivers turn and do coaching. So I started to do coaching, and it was just after I had a role with Audi as a driver, and they had taken me out to a lot of their grassroots Audi Club DE days. And the DE days were, amateur drivers take their street cars out on the racetrack and do 20-minute just open lapping sessions. So it's just fun. And what I realized there was the access to education was really, really poor. Most of the market wasn't able to afford to work with someone like me or other professional drivers that do coaching. And I knew that all of them were filming their laps or onboard videos for their own entertainment to go back and watch from their iPhones or GoPros. So immediately we knew, hey, we could just have them upload that video to us. What we do as professional coaches at the racetrack really is, after a session, review video with the driver. So it'd be almost the same type of coaching, almost the same personalization of it. And we could drop down the costs, and we can allow coaches to make a little bit more money without having to travel as well. Most of the guys I know or girls I know that do a lot of coaching, traveling 30, 35 weekends a year gets really tiresome.
Yeah.
We're hoping to drop down that price of education and then hope drive more money, drive more financial gain to those coaches, and allow those coaches to give the quality education that amateur racing needs, and be able to provide that in a more scalable way too.
How does it come about in terms of cost to be so much cheaper, almost like 1/10 I've seen and mentioned before? It's like, fair enough, obviously travel costs and accommodation may be part of it, but it can't be, I can't imagine it being that like 10 times. That's a huge difference.
Yeah, so you have to think about kind of the economics of it, right? If I'm going to travel to a racetrack and spend a full day with one driver, well, we're not charging an hourly rate, but if you break it down, you do end up kind of in a ballpark. You can kind of know what your hourly rate would be. So now what we're able to do is, rather than drivers having to pay for an entire day of our time, they can pay for 20 minutes of our time and still receive that personal education. So what a driver does is they upload a video from their iPhone, their GoPro, AIM SmartyCam, whatever it is, and our base kind of flagship products, what we call one lap analysis, where they upload one lap, this representation of where they are, typically their fastest lap or in that ballpark. And then a coach can watch that video, and then they'll film on top of that video with a web camera, annotation tools that will record a coaching session. And it's almost like I'm there in person with them. So I'll pause the video and I can say, hey, you're turning in here. We want to turn on there. Here's where we want to get the throttle. Here's why we want to delay that throttle. Here's why this is happening. And you film a 10 to 12, 15-minute coaching session, upload it. It takes 20 minutes of a coach's time. Now you're not paying for a whole day. You're just paying for 20 minutes. And that's where it really allows us to drop costs down, but still provide a really, really effective level of coaching. And that's kind of what we were testing out the end of last year, was like, hey, is this really effective, and is there demand for it? What we saw was drivers were picking up 2, 3, 4. Actually, we've seen drivers pick up 6 seconds after one $100 10-minute video coaching session, which is pretty insane.
I mean, that's a lot of time. We're talking hundreds of seconds in here. You're talking about like 6. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's insane. I would say our average customer is picking up over a second after one video right now. There's people spending a lot more money in sports trying to find a 1/10 of a second. So it's exciting. We're really
amazing.
happy with how it's going, and the level of coaches that we've been able to bring into our system has been awesome. We're highly, highly selective on who we let to coach. They have to have done it, and they have to be able to communicate really well. So that's kind of the key to this, right? And what makes it so effective is, one, you can work with really high quality educators. just have such a big impact on whatever you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things where you have to be committed as well, right? It can't just be a one-way thing. With the online coaching, it's a lot easier to kind of like, yeah, I'm doing it, and kind of just
Yeah.
not really implement it as easily because you don't feel the pressure of someone actually being there, and it happens that I've noticed that with a few friends of mine in terms of coaching, in terms of personal training as well, similar sort of thing where they're getting it online, and in person when they see their trainer and the trainer can see them, it sometimes makes that a little bit of a difference. But it is one of these things you have to be committed to.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where you do have to have that commitment, right? But most of the time when it comes to small technique changes, it, at least initially, that commitment is somewhat less important because you can really just focus, okay, I'm just going to try this and you'll see results really quick. Where something like personal training, it does take time to start to
Yeah,
see
time.
results.
Yeah, of course, 100%. Yeah, yeah.
It's harder to get into that whole system, right? So we have the benefit of most of the time pretty immediate results. Now it may take time to get consistency with it because we are working most of the time on fixing bad habits, forming good habits, which does take time. And then it's always a process, right? Like as you fix one thing, another thing comes up that's maybe a lesser problem that we have to go through, and that's where that the personal effective coaching for me is so important. And there's webinars, for instance, great tools. We do them, we believe in them, but they are limited in their effectiveness, and we have seen sometimes it cause negative effects because how do I know what mistake I'm doing wrong?
Yes, and interpretation obviously is very big key in all of this, right? So if I see something and I think that I need to tweak something where I might not need to do that, right?
Exactly. And when you drive a race car, there's 100 different things you're concentrating on, and it's really you have to form a priority list in your mind as a driver. And there's a couple things that we always hear in amateur racing, which are mostly flat out wrong for the most part. Like one is you always have to be on the throttle of brakes. Now the problem with that is if you're taught that too early and you don't have the technique right for trail braking into a corner, what drivers end up doing is they'll brake until they start to turn, and then they're ready to get off the brakes. But now they've been told, hey, I need to always be on one. So they start to get the throttle way too early. While yes, ideally, eventually you want to be trail braking almost all the way into the corner and reducing the time where you're off and just coasting. But most drivers aren't ready to do that. But they're prioritizing that over where they pick up initial throttle, when where they pick up initial throttle is actually the much more important thing. So what they're learning isn't incorrect, but it's wrong in the process, and that's where you can get kind of this bad habits or form incorrect assumptions from webinars and just very general coaching tools.
Yeah, definitely. It's one of these things where if you prioritize something that is so almost insignificant at the start, it really just negatively impacts everything. It's I can relate to that in a lot of different aspects of life, not just racing, but yeah. I guess one thing that occurred to me is that your father, if I'm not mistaken, is one of your biggest fans, right? And one of your biggest supporters.
Definitely agree with that.
And one of the things that he said to you when he questioned you is that, is this what you want to do? Is this what you would like to do? Is this something that you question in other people now? Is this something that you use as a way of trying to ensure that people are really serious about what they're doing when you're coaching them?
To be honest with you, no. And this mostly because where our focus is more on the amateur ranks, where it's more a passion, and they're doing it for fun, which I think has a very different mentality versus going at it from a career
Of course,
perspective. So I would say if I were to be, one-on-one coaching, let's say a younger kid coming up and, working solely with him, yeah, that's probably when I would ask that question. But when someone's doing it for fun, for their passion, I think you kind of know that answer already, especially if they're paying to try and learn to get better at it. And, it's just a very different mentality in terms of how your outlook on where you're trying to go.
Of course. And now that you've kind of transformed into coaching people a lot more, what is this what drives you? Is this what makes you feel like, I want to change someone's life so that they can have more fun? Like, where is the biggest now new source of motivation coming from?
So I would say it's to hopefully and someone needing to pay an absurd amount of money to get access to the very best educators in their specific market or interest area. In the US, you hear quite often to go learn from the best teachers or work with the best coaches in a specific sport. Parents or people are taking out second mortgages on their houses and things like that. That shouldn't be the case. Okay, maybe to work in person completely solely with that person, it's going to cost a lot of money. But those educators should be able to scale up their businesses more and make more money off of it. And some access, some level of personalized access to them should be affordable for everybody. So I would say that that's kind of the main motivation behind this. Motorsports is a personal passion. It's what I grew up doing. I'd still love to be pro racing if I could find an opportunity. I still will. But this is kind of the next evolution of that. And it's been fun building the company within motorsports, and then as we look to try and scale this form of education beyond it as well.
Awesome. And what was the definition of a good day for you? What's a good day, an accomplishment? Like, what would you feel like today was a good day?
Most of the time it's when we hear from customers and like, hey, I just picked up 2 seconds a lap, or I just won this race, or I just broke this track record. When we've been hearing that so often lately, and every day we hear that, that's kind of, it makes it all worth it at the end of the day, because that they get excited. They are become more passionate about the sport. They're going to talk about it more. They're going to get more people involved in it, and that's kind of what drives us right now.
And was this where you started off? Is this where it kicks? Like, what I'm trying to get at is, obviously when you start a company, it's a very different vision to when it starts to transform and take a life of its own, which it seems like it's doing right now. So How was what you started off with as a vision, and now how you see it different?
Oh, it's completely different than where we started off, like almost all startups, right? We definitely started off with the thought that there are many issues in amateur racing that we look at and that we think we can solve. And our belief is to help grow the professional side of a sport, you first must grow its amateur side of the sport. Get people involved in it. That's how you truly grow the pro side. So our goal was, how do we really help this sport grow? So our initial thought was, at least in the US, and I know this is a little bit different in different markets and different regions, but I think every market in the world struggles with this, is the ability or the ease of finding amateur racing events, understanding the different types of events, and registering and getting out there and just getting on track. I think that online process of that right now is extremely difficult. It's the US trying to register for an event, even if you've been to one before, can be an extremely frustrating experience. So our first thought was, if we can help the searchability of it and the easiness of how people register for events and get out there, that would be a huge impact on the sport. But what we realized was, there are legacy softwares that do that. I would say they don't do it very well, and I think that's a problem. But there's a belief in, because there's existing software there, there's more of a conflict to get people committed, get people using something. And it's a really complex problem as well to do that for clubs that have different organizations and different classes. It is a really complex problem. So as we were building towards that, we kind of launched this coaching thing as just a way to drive revenue. And we knew that this was a problem. We thought it was a smaller problem, but our main focus was on the registration. But we quickly realized was the rate of happiness of customers, the rate of their success was so great coming from our coaching that we quickly said, hey, this is actually what we should be focused on. This is going to make a bigger impact. And then eventually, we can come back and solve the other problems. So it kind of evolved as we started.
Come back and solve that other problem later. It doesn't sound like we're really going to go there later, are we? It sounds like this is going so well.
It's going so well, and I think there's changes in the other market. The biggest player just got bought by a bigger company, so they have more resources to invest in their own software. So I'm hoping that rather than going in and competing with them, we're actually going to try and partner with them and help them along that lines as well. So rather than, I think that's better for the overall industry at that point in solving different problems.
Do you feel more relaxed now that you're no longer driving and have the pressure of it? And do you feel like this is something that's more enjoyable, or do you still want the rush and the pressure and the heat that on you?
look, nothing beats driving a race car or 24 hours of Daytona or 12 hours of Sebring or something like that, right? That's probably the best feeling in the world. So I would say I definitely miss it. I'd love to still be doing it. I definitely don't call myself retired yet, but if the opportunity comes up, I'm still fit. I'm still ready to go. Obviously, coaching helps with those senses and keep you really active. And I wouldn't say that launching a startup and trying to build a company is any less pressure. You still have people relying on you. You still have some employees and a partner that relies on you to perform really, really high. So it's like you have your teammates, your crew guys, your engineers that rely on you as a driver. It's a very different challenge. One is a lot more physical, a lot more being in the zone. You still have to be in the zone here, but it's probably more creative on this side, which is nice. So they're both really enjoyable. I think ultimately driving a race car is amazing, best feeling in the world. But you do have a lack of sometimes the creativity side that building the business and the startup can come. And there are more true friend building and team building on this side in terms of building the business and working with advisors and teammates and consistently over working towards the same problem or same challenge over a longer period of time. Where motorsports, it's year by year contracts. You're always kind of jumping ship for the most part, and you never know what your future is going to hold. We don't know what our future is going to hold here either, but hopefully it's going to be a little bit more secure as we build the company up and become bigger and bigger over time.
Yeah, and at least more security than 1 year, hopefully, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, one of the things that obviously a lot of people deal with in all aspects of life, regardless of racing, is stress, right? And I feel like that is hugely increased when you're a driver on almost on a knife edge, waiting off a cliff to just, be at the end of your career or at the end of the sponsorship or at the end of whatever you're doing, right? How did you deal with that, and what was your method of really keeping yourself in check and making sure that you were still you once the race finished?
Yeah, I think for me there was two things, and everybody does struggle with this to some point, right? For me, the two main points. First was some type of meditation, focus on breath, just to let things go. So I'm a big believer in spending 5 minutes of just coming in and focus purely on breathing. And they have different studies on this. And actually, we went to a place called Formula Medicine that trains a lot of DTM drivers, Formula One drivers on the mental side and physical side. And their big thing was being able to quiet the mind, and you do that by focusing on the breath. And I'm a big believer in that. I think it helped me tremendously, not only in terms of performance on the racetrack, but also getting rid of stress away from it as well. The second part of it is really just letting go of things you can't control. Being able, and this is a really, really tough one to do, and I'm always having to check back in on that. But just concentrate on what you can control, doing your maximum effort to the best of your ability. Focus on those things you can control, and just let the rest of the things take an effect. And if it goes your way, great. If it doesn't, well, you did everything you could. And I think it's a really tough thing to be able to truly do, but that was my main focus. And I always did struggle if I didn't feel like I performed really well in a workout or gave it my best or spent enough time in the simulator, then my anxiety would come up and my stress would come up and I'd struggle with that. So I did have to go release it. I had to give that everything. And then I knew I could relax and be confident that I was ready to go. So for me, those are the two ways that I went about dealing with that stress and anxiety that life throws at you.
Of course, and life throws at you more and more as time goes on, right? Like it's this huge, it just the ceiling of stress that you think is the worst stress you can ever feel is always broken. And there's always more, but it's never broken below for the level of peace you feel is never really that ceiling.
That stress level for some reason, or masochist something.
It's crazy. This is one of the things I was actually talking about recently. So it's funny that you mentioned the breath thing, and we're talking about stress because I feel like it's a problem that people who aren't just drivers but day to day, anyone and everyone can relate to, is when your life is over here and you have this level of I wake up, I'm in this mindset of normality, your average normality of where you're at, and then you get older, and as years go by, the level of what you call peace rises in terms of how you get closer and closer to stress, right? Like, not saying that stress is a one extreme thing, but obviously it raises, the whole tide goes up. And then soon something happens, and then, you're broken into this new level of, okay, this is my new level of peace now that I have 10 more things to worry about. So my new level of peace is here. But because the floor is never broken and you never go lower and lower in terms of being able to rest more, right? You're never actually in a situation where you're ever really more peaceful than you were before. And this isn't, and one thing that I feel like, you may be able to relate to is that it's not something that you try and do purposely in terms of it's not like you go out your way to try and become more stressed, right? These things happen. This is what life does. It pushes you up. But without doing something purposefully, you're never going to go down, as in lower and more restful forms of yourself. So it's funny that things like breathing techniques, which is seen quite often as hoo-ha, although there is a lot of research for it. Meditation, again, a lot of stuff that's seen and positive benefits that a lot of top athletes do, but it's still seen as hoo-ha in some senses. That it has this connotation of, oh, I'm going to be so peaceful that I'm going to detach from everything and nothing matters to me anymore, and that's it. My life is just going to flow because I'm with the wind. Compared to really like actually understanding that it's so practical. If I have an argument with you right now, my mind is going to be annoyed and stressed, and I'm going to be at a higher raised level of annoyance where everything annoys me, and I'm not going to be able to enjoy other things in life. Whereas if I'm at a better level of peace because I've just had the most amazing time and I've just had such a good time with whatever I'm doing, whether that's on a beach or whether that's with a girl or a guy or whatever, doesn't matter. You're in a situation where you're more peaceful and things that you do, you enjoy.
Yeah.
I
think, totally 100% agree with that. And I think where not only is it more enjoyable, but it does also help performance in whatever you do in life. And what the big thing that Formula Medicine works on, that we were able to test through heart rate, and they actually go and measure, you have alpha and beta waves that your brain creates, which is stress or intensity and calmness. And they do a bunch of biofeedback for us to learn. It's really cool stuff. And one thing, their biggest focus point is on what they call mental economy, which is being able to be as calm as possible while still being super highly focused and reducing what they call brain chatter. And for anybody that races, I'll explain it in a racing way, but I think everybody can relate to this. So on the racetrack, you're out there, you make a mistake, and that little voice in your head that's like, oh, you're an idiot, how did you miss that apex, what could you do, while you're already 3 corners later, a lot of times you don't even realize it's happening until you get out of the car, and then all of a sudden you're like, my head was not in the moment. I was thinking about all the mistakes I was doing, or I was thinking about work, or I was thinking about this. You didn't even realize that your brain was having that whole conversation with itself. It sounds really weird to say, unless you kind of...
I fully know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So what the breath allows, and this is a big thing, a big improvement in my career, especially like in qualifying where you're really going for it, was by focusing on the breath ahead of time. When you focus on the breath correctly, can't actually think about anything else. So, there's what they call, I think it was circle breathing and square breathing. I was more of a square breather. It doesn't really matter, but it's, you breathe in for 2 seconds, you hold that breath for a second, you release for 2 seconds. And you just really focus in on the stomach coming up and down, the timing of the breath. And you do that for a minute or two, and you have to focus in on yourself, on your body. And that's where you get rid of all of that brain chatter. And that's where the science starts to come in. And why it's so important is, like you said, it's not, touchy-feely, feel the nature and the wind. It's focusing on your body to get rid of that mental chatter that's always going on. And I think that's such a critical thing, because I think that chatter is exhausting and adds to stress, and it digs this hole. You put the shovel down and hopefully start digging your way out of that hole that we all dig ourselves into sometimes.
Yeah, and I think we dig ourselves and people help us dig too. It's one of these things that, just last weekend I was at my nephew's tennis game, and he's 9 years old and he's playing a tennis game, right? It's a weekend thing. Everyone's having fun. But just because there were a few people there to watch him, as a 9-year-old, he felt so judged that when he lost a match, he was crying. And it's crazy to think that this is the world we live in, where a 9-year-old kid who's just out there on a Sunday to play a tennis game is so stressed in his own mind that he feels so judged by everyone around him that he's in a situation where he feels like he's having an anxiety attack when he lost. Yeah. It's crazy, you know? And this is the world that we've created for ourselves.
Yeah, and tennis is I'm a big tennis fan, and that's probably for me one of the most difficult sports for that, because not only are you alone, you're by yourself, similar to motorsports, but in motorsports we at least have a helmet on, we can at least hide our face, we're away from things. Where in tennis, you're like, you see everybody watching you, right? And you're out there, people see everything that you do. It's an extremely tough sport, especially at a young age, to have that whole interaction of people watching and being out there in front of and performing in front of people. And everything that you do. I think there's probably wrestling. There's a few sports that are, I think, of the next level above, team sports and things like that at that age. And that's a difficult one.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I feel like the fact that you mentioned when you didn't do that corner perfectly, what you're really doing is you're judging yourself, right? And that judgment you can't dissolve and for however many laps you keep it for. It never goes away. And only when you get out and you calm down and you're able to see that judgment, can you say, oh crap, I've been sticking with this judgment for so long that I've been beating myself up, which has been affecting my, the mind chatter that you're referring to. And it's the fact that we can't even see that we're judging ourselves most of the time, which is causing a million other plethora of problems that we have in life. So,
we're not doing anything to the best of our ability when we're thinking about something else while we're performing or doing something. Like, doesn't matter if you're working and thinking about the yoga pose you did wrong or whatever it is, but if you're not focused on what you're doing, you're not going to be doing the best of your ability. That's a really hard challenge, though. And I don't care how much training you have, it's always going to be a battle. You can just get better at it and quicker to realize that brain chatter's going on. The quicker that you can realize it, the more that you can practice in the quiet moments. So the more that I practice it before I got in the car, as I'm putting my helmet on, getting into it, the quicker I can realize that brain chatter is going on while I'm in the car and redirect it and kind of get back to that breath. So down the straightaways, I can, just focus on that breath. And the more I do it, the faster I'm able to realize it's going on and switch it off.
It's almost like a form of awareness that you have, right, about yourself and about your own thoughts that are occurring that allows you to kind of almost, by being aware of it, dissolve it. It's pretty cool. Yeah. I know what you're referring to. And one of these things that obviously happens naturally as time goes on is that, I guess not so much for the people that you're teaching, but for yourself, you're in a situation where the fact that you had to make sacrifices in the first place to get to where you are, to be in a race car, to be someone who has the opportunity to do what other hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people are trying for, but don't have it, adds that extra pressure of judgment, And is that something that you feel you've had to deal with as well?
I think it's more having appreciation for it. I think I don't think that adds stress. It adds maybe motivation to say, hey, I'm so lucky to be able to do this. The sacrifices that I had to make to get here are less than a lot of other people that are sacrificing a lot more to be able to achieve their dreams. So while yes, it's sacrificing, I know I have it pretty damn good, and it just gives you the motivation to say, hey, when I'm working out, when I'm doing it, I need to do everything I can to take advantage of this kind of situation that I've lucked into. And then, it's always where, luck, opportunity meets hard work and determination. And okay, I've got the opportunity. I got to make sure I'm damn well taking care of what I can control to give that appreciation for it.
Awesome. One last question to end this podcast is, what do you do to let go? Because to let go is an instruction, but there's no how manual on that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for me, it's really kind of just focusing on the two things. Did I control everything I could control to the best of my ability? And then focusing on the breath. So
but what example to that is no. If you say, did I do the best? I didn't. Well, now I'm annoyed about it. I'm going to carry on and, keep it there. I'm not going to let it go, right?
So for me, it's analyze, strategize, and then perform. So the first thing I do is analyze, did I do everything I can control? The answer is no. Well, then I need to make a strategy on how can I change that the next time to make sure that doesn't happen again. That same mistake doesn't happen again. Form the strategy and then go out there and do it. There's nothing I can do to control what I did wrong in the past. And I think back to earlier,
in that sentence right there, there's nothing I can do to control the past is acceptance. That acceptance is the letting go. How do you do that? That's the key, because the rest of it is, it's very structured. It's boom, boom, boom. Like I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But the fact that you have to let go of something that, you actually really care about, that really annoyed you about something that you should have done. I should have made that turn. I should have made that goal. I should have made that hoop. I should have made that goal, whatever it is. You're in a situation, I should have made that meeting. I should have, got that promotion. I should have got home on time. I should have got to that recital. Whatever it is, the acceptance of letting go. Do you see what I mean? Rather than just saying, okay, I need to accept that. That's the instruction. It's not the how.
Yeah, I guess it really comes down to a logic-based system and fully understanding, okay, something bad happened. That doesn't change the fact that I'm wanting something good to happen. And understanding the logic of, if you want that next good thing to happen, you've got to be doing something at the best of your ability. You've got to be looking at, what can I do to achieve that next thing? And for that to happen, you have to be able to accept that you can't do anything about the past. You can't change that. So you figure out what went wrong and then go forward. So until you have that logic-based system that you're looking forward and you're understanding, hey, okay, this is what I want now, or this is what I'm still trying to get to. I have to be focused here. I can't also be focused over here and achieve this. And then once you understand that relationship, letting go and that acceptance, that true acceptance that you're asking about, it just happens. It has to happen. I think that's the best way I can answer.
Yeah, no, I think you hit the nail on the head. You gave the two right answers. Is that it happens by itself, which is the spontaneity part, and you use logic to get there.
Yeah. At least that's way it works in my mind. And I think everyone's minds and how people.
Of course, yeah, big differences. But if someone can relate to you and feel that they can actually apply what you've just said, then
yeah,
it's really good, right?
Yeah, it's by no means, people say don't dwell in the past and there's no gain from that. I do think there is a gain from analyzing, but you very short amount of time, figure out what went wrong. Okay, back to where I need to be focused. I know that was a mistake I made. Now I know how I can fix it in the future, and then you go forward. And if you're always focused on the next thing, then you'll be all right. It goes back to, if you can't be focused on the next thing while you're beating yourself up over the last. And it's a tough transition, right? I don't know. I've been lucky in my life to be able from an early age to just always be focused on the next thing. And I think that goes back to.
Then how do you focus on the now? If you're always focused on the next thing, or the dwelling or analyzing the previous thing, where's the now left in the?
Well, I think the now is so I think first off, being able to focus on the next thing is a much more deeper psychological, effect, where you've got to have the right support system, the right family, some genetics as well. But I think the focusing on the now it goes back to controlling what you can control. So I want to get here. I want to achieve this. To be able to be ready for that, I need to focus on what I'm doing right now to get ready for that. And I think that's the now is always having that end goal, but focusing on what you can control to be able to get there.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you very much for that. I felt like I was trying to really, bring out what you really, really were thinking, so that people can really hopefully see your thought patterns and therefore benefit from it,
It's a really tough challenge, and it's a great question. So I'll be interested to see what kind of the listeners think, and if they disagree or agree, I'd love to hear that. And, the more that we discuss this, the stronger that the logic in our brains can form, the more ideas we've got, the better that we can all get. So it's always a fun conversation.
Awesome. Thank you for being on the show, Dion. It's been a pleasure having you.
Appreciate it. It's been fun.
If you like this episode of the Racecoin podcast, go ahead and subscribe so you can get notified every Monday when a new episode is out. And don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.